Poverty of Nations is about why some countries got economical success and why some didn't. It explores long-term histories of different regions of the world, giving priority to Europe, United States, Japan, China, Arab world, and Latin America. The Wealth and Poverty of Nations was published in 1998, which was written by David Lawrence, formerly Professor of Economics and Professor of History at Harvard University. The main aim of writing this book was to do the world history. As rightly said by Samuelson, no new light has been thrown on the reason why poor countries are poor and rich countries are rich. When answering the main question of the book, why some countries are rich and some are so poor, two schools of thought come up. One say, because they deserved it, they got it. And some say, because they were aggressive, ruthless, hypocritical, and their victims were happy, innocent, and weak. To some extent, both these points hold some truth in it. So how we got here? To know this, we need to know what was going on in Europe and later about European offshoots to overseas. Basically, in 11th century, Europe is the driver, and in 15th century, it is ahead of everyone. This European advancement from the position of backwardness was because they had ability to learn from the others and had ability to invent new technologies. Looking at advances of Europe, first comes arms and ability to kill. They learn about gunpowder from Chinese. Then comes mastery of navigation, which they learned from Arab through Jewish intermediaries. Thirdly, after they came to know about Cape of Good Hope, they started measuring latitudes, which helped them to sail to different places. And finally, wind and water power to produce and manufacture, in which church played a very big role. Europe was far ahead in everyday inventions as well. First comes the eyeglasses, which is useful in reading, writing, measuring, and building up instruments. It increased the lifetime of skilled craftsmen, artisans, scribe, etc. to more than the double, so people could work more and not get retired at early age. Then comes the clock. People who knew how to make clock could make anything. So when Industrial Revolution came, people hired clockmakers to build up their instruments, machines, etc. Then comes the printing press. Chinese knew about printing earlier than the Europeans, but they didn't have alphabet which Europe had. And secondly, printing asked a lot of investment and resources which Chinese lacked. Why Europe benefited so much? It is because of European hubris, culture and attitude, greed, curiosity, readiness to learn, and they were great travelers. Then came series of expansion. Europeans encouraged more expedition. There was competition among different countries. This was the main political difference with Chinese and the Muslim world. Other way was Europe transforming into two camps, Protestants and Catholics, that ultimately lead to consequences for economic development. What emerged from this story was Spain and Portugal became far more rich, but unfortunately they got blinded with this wealth and depended on other countries for their need. And ultimately those countries who invented new technology as well as supplied Spanish with cannon, food and textiles became rich. Then the main thing happened, the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution marks the hinge between the older and the new economy. The first country to take up Industrial Revolution was Britain, and then Northern West Europe, and lastly to other parts of the world. Industrial Revolution gave so many things, including increase in life expectancy, cheap cotton, and mass production of soap. Japan was the first non-Western country to take up Industrial Revolution. In spite of all hiccups and constraints. They took up Western ideas and technology. Coming up to critical analysis. According to McNeill, Lawrence is Eurocentric while writing this book and emphasizes one third of his book towards Europe. Secondly, he contradicts himself at various instances in the book. Furthermore, when talking about the culture, Lawrence himself neglects and denies the very world history he aims to write. George Rosen is very inspired with Lawrence's work and appreciates him about his idea of ideal society, which is to develop technology, spread knowledge, giving opportunity to the one who deserves it, and finally allow people to enjoy their success. Rosen also agrees with Lawrence when he makes an approach to the nation's economic growth in stressing on the process of technological change and providing those conditions for its occurrence and spread of such change. For Frederick, this book is not only about history but the vision of quality of life that it is given, in turn which leads to development, growth and better living. According to the author Deepak Lal, he doesn't believe in what Lawrence has to say, and he believes that he did convincingly answer the question that why some are rich and some are so poor, which is the biggest drawback of the book. Secondly, he says that in book he has stressed a lot on culture, but what actually culture means to him, he has not discussed it anywhere. In addition to that, he says that Lawrence neglected the contribution of Middle Ages to the Western world. And lastly, he believes that Lawrence is materialistic by the way he has put up his work. Finally, seen through my perspective, the author has organized his text into 29 chapters covering the whole human history and every part of the world. From this book, one gains new sense of how steel was first made, the technological grandeur and the limitations of the great Chinese empires of hundreds of years ago, the tragedy of intellectual and practical decline of Islam, the pride and the self-enclosed world of Spain at the height of its power, and the countless fascinating stories of craftsmen, organizers of great enterprises and the trades and the potters of all types. Thus, Lawrence wages intellectual war on all who deny that the history of the wealth and the poverty of nations over the past millennium is the history of the creation in Europe and the fusion of technological and geographic expansions originating in Europe itself. Coming to recommendation, if there is a single key to success, that is to relative wealth, is willingness to borrow whatever is useful from abroad, whatever the price in terms of injured elite pride or harm to influential interests. Second, willingness to trust your own eyes and the results of your own experiments rather than relying primarily on old books or pronouncements of powerful and established authorities. If at all there is a second key, it lies in politics. A government strong enough to keep its servants from confiscating whatever they please, limited enough for individuals to be confident that the state is unlikely to suddenly put all they have at hazard, and willingly, once in a while, to sacrifice official splendor and martial glory in order to give merchants and manufacturers an easier time to making money. My question today is, what really makes nations different from each other?